For the last 3 years, I've taken it upon myself to critique games. I haven't always been consistent, but when I've done it my best, and I've grown from my time doing them. Sometimes I've made videos I've later regretted, sometimes I made videos I just didn't like, but I've always tried to be honest, I've always tried to be real. There's no bullshit, it's just my opinion, and today is no exception. There has, however, been cases where my opinion has changed, and more importantly, there are occasions where a game kind of exists in flux when it comes to my thoughts. Games that don't have a fixed place when it comes to my opinion, and today's game is certainly one of those as of writing this intro. Today we are looking at Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding, released on November 8th, 2019. This game is a divisive one. I imagine a lot of people are going to come into this video with their opinion set in stone already. I do warn these people that my opinion probably won't line up with yours, or it might not anyway. There's the potential. In fact, we actually did a video covering that exact topic. It's also about Death Stranding and relates to this video. You can watch it by pressing the eye up there in the corner, and it'll take you right there. I recommend watching that at some point. This is actually the first time I'm doing a console review on this channel, so with all that preamble out of the way, I think it's time we ask, Death Stranding, how bad can it be? This is the major turning off point for so many people out there. The game's reputation of being just a walking simulator has somewhat tainted its image, and while I don't think that's necessarily fair, I do think this gameplay isn't going to appeal to a lot of people simply because it isn't structured in a way that many other games are. Is it a walking simulator? Not really. Walking is a massive part of this game, sure, but a walking simulator is all about exploration and piecing together a narrative through observing events or items. There really is so much more to this game than what that phrase would suggest. Before we go into the ways that this isn't a walking simulator though, let's talk about walking. Traversing through this game can be done in a couple of ways, but you're going to find yourself on foot for a large portion of the game. This isn't like most games, mostly because the enemies aren't actually the biggest threat. You aren't going to find much of an issue fighting mules or terrorists or sneaking past / killing BTs. You want to know what the biggest threat in this game is? Gravity. This game will put your controller through the ropes, specifically your triggers. Before you unlock some of the more useful equipment to help you on your deliveries, you're going to be holding L2 and R2 a lot as you stumble and lean your way across America, with the earth trying to pull you down to its core, sucking you towards your inevitable demise and a failed cargo mission. There are ways to help you, of course, including ladders, climbing anchors, and even things like zip lines, bridges, trucks, and bikes, among a variety of other gear to make your life easier, but gravity will mess you up in this game. The best and worst piece of equipment to help you though is the floating carriers. Those things are the bane of my existence. The floating carrier is essentially a box that runs off chiral crystals and follows you about. Or well, that's the idea anyway, because these things get caught up more than Twitch streamers on Twitter. Sliding down a cliff and accidentally go too fast off the edge, oops, rope snapped. Walking through an empty area with tiny rocks at a speed faster than 4 miles an hour, oops, rope snapped. Jumping over a ravine with a tiny space between the sides because it's the safest way back to your location, oops, rope snapped. They are an actual nightmare. Speaking about things that are a nightmare, the mountains. There are a few landscapes across the game that you explore, and one of them takes the gameplay from "it's fine" to "I want to find something else to play," because dear god, the episode set in the snowy mountains actually made me rage at points. It's incredibly infuriating because you're balancing on a constant basis, obstacles that were climbable on the ground now seem to be gargantuan tasks that send you sliding to your demise, and on top of it all your cargo is deteriorating at an accelerated rate because of the snow. For those who don't know, the weather in this game is actually a substance called timefall, and is probably the biggest obstacle in this game. Timefall is this otherworldly rain that accelerates the aging of anything it touches drastically. It gets even worse when you hit timefall snow, which is even more effective than its watery version. Admittedly, when I picked up this game, I thought it was just going to be a 4-step program. Get a delivery, walk to a location, deliver said delivery, repeat. And don't get me wrong, a lot of this game is exactly that, but it's definitely not only that. Without talking too much about the narrative, there are segments where you need to stealth through large amounts of enemies, and there are even shooting segments taking advantage of the guns provided to you throughout the game. The shooting isn't amazing, but it does make for some interesting changes in the pace. This was a really long segment, and I think it definitely needed to be. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to say that you're guaranteed to love this game, because even with the, in my opinion, unfair labeling, the gameplay is going to be divisive. I think it's a point that needed to be discussed in detail though, because even with everything surpassing my expectations, I do think that this is probably the weakest aspect of Death Stranding. It genuinely does have a lot going on, we didn't even cover anything, but yeah, it's the weakest part of this game. From Death Stranding's weakest aspect to what is, in my opinion, its undisputed strong point, and I'll try to be a lot quicker this time because I could genuinely be here all day. The way this game is presented is nothing short of beautiful. Everything about it impressed me. The stunning landscapes, the view from said landscapes, the sleek futuristic architecture, the chiral holograms and the way they look, it's all stark, contrasting and genuinely stunning. Talking about the landscapes a bit more for a second, but genuinely I think it does a good job at showing this apocalyptic world. Everything comes across as alien. It doesn't look like Earth, and when you get the rare glimpses of Earth, it's quite breathtaking. Ruined buildings and cities from a time before the Death Stranding, some of which you explore, filled with the BTs of people who unfortunately lived there at the time of their collapse. Even the dreaded snowy mountains look beautiful when it isn't blizzarding. It looks like your average snowy peak, but the atmosphere combined with the visuals and the camera angles is great. It's just the traversing it which sucks. The camera angles and the sense of direction is strong in this game though, and say what you want about Kojima, but the man has vision. So many times throughout this game I found myself talking to my Twitch chat and mentioning, "That's a cool shot," or exclaiming, "Look at that," and without any context, here is one of my personal favourite shots in this entire game. I think it's such a good cutscene, and while I can't explain too much to avoid spoilers, the sense of dread, and if you're like me and love the performances in this game, excitement this shot brings is fantastic when it's in its scene. Then we come to the audio, and there is a reason it won the award for best score/music. It's the best part of this game. It's used pretty sparingly, which is both to its benefit and its detriment. Sometimes you're walking for long stretches at a time with little to no sound other than footsteps, but that makes the emotional impact of these songs all the more effective. When you have a frustrating journey, having that soothing emotional score be used sparingly is really effective and brings the player back down to continue going. It also brings a lot of hope when seeing your objective in the distance. Really inspirational. Ludwig Forssell did such a good job here, it's incredible. For the sake of transparency, Death Stranding is a story that doesn't pick up straight away, but once the ball is rolling, it's a narrative that is structured and paced so well it will keep you engaged throughout. Set in an apocalyptic United States, the game follows a group of people surviving after an event called the Death Stranding. The Stranding caused beached things, or BTs, to start appearing and roaming the Earth. BTs are usually invisible creatures originating from the beach, a land that people usually visit during near-death experiences and are said to link to the afterlife. These BTs can cause events called voidouts, massive explosions that are caused when a BT consumes a dead person who is in the process of necrosis. BTs are also responsible for the timefall I mentioned earlier. The population has decided to come together and live in knot cities, and are dependent on the organisation Bridges to supply their needs. Bridges also performs under the UCA, or United Cities of America. In the game, you play as Sam Porter Bridges, Norman Reedus, as he is tasked to help rebuild America one knot at a time. Sam is a carrier of dooms, a condition that varies in severity but allows people to sense, see, or even control BTs in more severe cases. Sam is also a repatriate, meaning he can be revived and returned to the world of the living. Sam is equipped with a BB, or a bridge baby, and is sent on his journey, coming across a variety of characters along his way. Speaking of characters, the performances in this game are delightful. Some of them are a little more jarring than others, but overall you're in for some incredible acting/voice acting, with Mads Mikkelsen and Troy Baker being the standouts in my eyes. Tommy Earl Jenkins as Die Hardman also becomes a stellar performance come the end of the game, but does take a little time to step above Exposition Guy 1. Oh, and I hope you like exposition, by the way, because there's a lot of it and it repeats itself often. It drove me insane. Then you have the data logs and emails, which I admittedly haven't read many of because there is a maddening amount of readables in this game. If I wasn't streaming, I may have out of curiosity, but dear god, it became too much very quickly. This doesn't even scratch the surface of this game in terms of its story. There is so much going on, and the narrative of this game runs deeper and deeper. Conspiracies, discussions about history, religious undertones, transhumanism to a degree, ghosts and the afterlife, the soul. There is no shortage of readings to take from this game. Genuinely, if there was any reason to stick with this game, it's the narrative. I think that's the selling point here. Death Stranding is one of those games that I found really enjoyable, and while I do have my problems with the game, I do think that it's a fantastic story and this is a very important game to be made. Seeing a company like Sony step a little outside of their comfort zone is fantastic and should be seen as a good thing by the medium. Games aren't a definitive article, they're an art form. There's so many readings and ways to make a game that aren't just focused on shooting someone or slashing someone. That being said, for a gameplay purist, I could not recommend this game at all. Death Stranding's gameplay is at best enjoyable and at worst miserable, and I experienced both throughout my time playing. It has a lot going on, and if you were just worried that this game might just be a walking simulator, it's definitely got more for you to appease your appetite, but if you do have your mindset on what a game should be and what you like out of games, this is probably not gonna be for you. I can recommend it for a fan of engaging stories, however, and if you're like me and love it when things go a bit crazy, this game is going to satisfy that itch very good. For more How Bad Can It Be or VividChim content, why not hit that subscribe button and the bell icon next to it to be informed as soon as a video gets uploaded. By the way, we also have a Patreon now, so if you want these videos a day earlier than everyone else, for as little as $1 you can join the Patreon and get every video we do 24 hours early. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.